Okay, so this week's book was The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick background on the author himself. I'm going to do a rough summary of the story, and then I'm going to go over some analysis of important themes that I've seen throughout the book. So to start off, Kazuo Ishiguro was born in Nagasaki, Japan in 1954, and then he and his family moved to Guildford, Surrey in the UK when he was young. I think he was around like 5 or 6 or so. And according to Ishiguro, he said that growing up with a Japanese family in the UK was absolutely crucial to his writing style, as it allowed him to see perspectives and to see things differently than others would. Some of his other books that are well known is Never Let Me Go, which was published in 2005, and then he had actually a recent one in 2021 that was published called Clara and the Sun, and then we have this one, which was published in 1989, it's a bit old, 1989, and it actually won the Booker Prize, so that's pretty neat. So the story overall goes over the journey of Mr. Stevens, the butler, the head butler at Darlington Hall. His previous employer, Lord Darlington, died, and then he got a new employer, Mr. Faraday, who is an American gentleman. And Mr. Faraday asked him to go on like a vacation to kind of like cool off, get some time off, because I don't think he really had any. It's not so much in his book. And so he does. And so throughout the book, it feels kind of like a journal as he's detailing the events that had happened that day and stuff that he remembered from his past that kind of related to what had happened throughout the day. So kind of, flips flops between the present and the past, which is really nice actually, as it kind of depicts his progression, or maybe even fall, kind of, as a butler. So in terms of themes, the one that I really want to highlight is that of duty. He also, Mr. Stevens, highlights and really emphasizes the importance of dignity and loyalty as well, but what really is over the top in this book is that of duty, especially that of duty as a butler to others. So one of the first instances in this book is that on page 36. This is when his father is recounting the story of the unknown butler in India at the time. In British-occupied India, the butler had found a tiger underneath the table. He let his employer know, and then he dealt with the tiger, came back and said, dinner will be served as the usual time, and I'm pleased to say that there is no discernible traces left of the recent occurrence of that time. And then he goes, Mr. Stevens, the main character, goes on to say that his father would repeat that line and shake his head and be like, wouldn't that be cool? And he even points out that for when I look back over his career, Mr. Stevens, to his father, I can see with hindsight that he must have striven throughout his years to somehow learn how to become that butler of a story. And in my view, at the peak of his career, my father achieved his ambition. But what dare I say, Mr. Stevens throughout the novel seems to idolize his father as a butler. His father followed duty well. He did everything that he needed to do and more. He was an exemplary example of someone in his post. And so he tries to kind of like mimic that and do everything that he possibly can as a butler. And in instances that I'm going to point out later, it's very much certain. Another instance of him following duty and it being of the utmost importance is that of when his father dies. During this time, there's a big event going on at the house. History was being made in the halls as they were going over important details as to why the French and the Germans should get along. It was like pre-World War II, I believe. And during that course, Mr. Stevens, his father, had passed away, and yet he still carried on as if nothing happened, because that is what his duty requires him to do. His duty requires him to be there and provide satisfactory, if not exemplary, service to all of his guests, especially the lord of the house, Lord Darlington. He does everything that he can to make sure that no one suspects anything is wrong, and he tries to make sure everything is going on time, in order, correctly, and nothing is of issue. And that is what he does. And on the end of page 110, he says, for all its sad associations, his father's death. Whenever I recall that evening today, I find I do so with a large sense of triumph. It's kind of sad and frankly also impressive that he is able to look back on his father's death and feel triumphantly that he was able to carry out his duties as the butler and not like say goodbye to his father as he's dying. Another horrible instance of him doing what he must as a butler, following his duties and being loyal, is that of the firing of the Jewish maids. Lord Darlington at that time was associating with some anti-Semitic people who were not very fond of Jewish people as a whole, which was, evident in pre-World War II. And so he asked Lord Darlington to fire 2 housemaids who happened to be Jewish. When he brings this up with that housekeeper, Miss Kenton, she goes crazy. She's like, you can't do this. These people are amazing employees. They have no reason to be fired. And he says, that's what Lord Darlington wants, so that's what I'm gonna do. Even though later on in the book, he goes on and outlines the fact that he did not agree with it. He did not share the same sentiments as Lord Darlington, yet because that is his employer, it is his duty as the head butler to follow his employer's desires and wishes. He will go on and do things that are not great, such as firing those maids. And as we go on throughout the story, there's lots of instances of him doing what he must, doing his duty as a butler, just even if it contradicts his own personal views and opinions.